You want to get into weaker glasses in any case, and then don't wear glasses when you don't need them.
Welcome to Wellness, your ultimate guide to unlocking your full human potential through biohacking. I'm your host, Ashley Daly. I'm a certified sports nutrition coach, and I have a degree in kinesiology, and I'm a former personal trainer and Pilates instructor. If you're listening on YouTube, hit subscribe as it helps listeners just like you find this hidden health information faster. The cosmetics industry is highly unregulated, meaning harmful chemicals are hiding in your typical drugstore and big box products. But ARAZA Beauty is the first paleo-certified makeup line in the US, made with real ingredients you can pronounce. No parabens, phthalates, hidden toxins like PUFAs, titanium dioxides, or silicone fillers. Their formulas are nourishing and actually good for your skin. They promote that youthful glow and high performance results. Visit arazabeauty.com/Ashley Deely, ARAZA. That's arazabeauty.com/Ashley Deely. Today's guest is Claudia Muehlenweg, also known as the Holistic Eye Coach. Claudia is the founder of the Naturally Clear Vision Institute and a leading voice in natural vision improvement. She trains other coaches through her certification program and offers courses to help everyday people see more clearly without relying on glasses or surgery. Claudia focuses on understanding and addressing the root cause of poor eyesight. She believes traditional fixes can actually make our eyes worse over time. Claudia's passion comes from personal experience. She started needing glasses at age 3, but disliked wearing them so much, she set out to heal her own vision naturally, a goal she achieved over 20 years ago. Today, she helps others do the same using gentle, science-informed methods which support long-term eye health. True vision is about more than just seeing clearly. It's about supporting your entire well-being. Claudia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley.
I am so excited to dive into your life's mission and your work and what you've been doing. So for listeners hearing about you for the first time, can you please share your background story?
Yeah, so I got my first pair of glasses at the age of 3 years old. I was farsighted. I had what's called convergent squint. My right eye was turning in. I was always the clumsy kid, bumping into things because my depth perception wasn't good. And I remember I didn't do kindergarten or anything. I got to school at the age of 6, and I was the only kid. Later on, there was one boy that joined who was like the smart kid. I was not like the school smart. I got bullied. I got teased. And it literally made my life miserable. My parents always said, at home, you have such a big mouth. And at school, I was this shy, like, because I got bullied. I was trying to, like, not, I was hoping the teacher wouldn't call on me because I probably didn't know the answer. And then in my teenage years, I ended up playing handball. That's a long story. They didn't have enough girls because I was not athletic. And I couldn't wear my glasses. And now in hindsight, I realized like throwing and catching a ball, running around, the peripheral vision, being outside, not wearing my glasses all helped me to get out of them. The doctors told me at like 15, your eyes are normal. I'm like, wait, what? My eyes are normal? Because I always had the bad eyes. And then glasses free, long story, quick forward jump to the mid 30s and a difficult marriage and a divorce. And I was back in glasses in my mid 30s. And after a few years of that, eventually separating from my husband, I noticed that my vision, like wearing the glasses, got really worse really quick. And at that point, I was over 40. And I thought, like, well, it's like everybody gets glasses, right? I was already farsighted as a kid, meaning like I couldn't see up close. And then after I had this epiphany one night where I took my glasses off, and this happened every time, but that night it was really bad. I had a very stressful experience getting lost in downtown Los Angeles. That was before we had Google Maps. We had the old thick book called the Thomas Guide. Anyway, I took the glasses off and my vision was so blurry that I got really scared. I was like, if this continues, I was a graphic designer back then, taking care of my kids by myself. Like, I really got that epiphany, like, I've done this before, and I actually got a book back as a teenager, and I got that book again. But at that point, I needed more help, and I found a coach to help me with my vision. And eventually, shortly after that, I decided to make that my life's mission and did the teacher training. So that's kind of rolled in a nutshell. But twice in my life was I able to get out of glasses.
Whew. Oh my goodness. I feel like that was the quickest intro for anyone I've ever had on the show. You wrapped it up so tightly. But Claudia, there's so much more to your work. And I think what I'd like to learn about is, can you tell us a little bit more about that book? And then, are you by trade an optometrist or ophthalmologist?
No. First of all, so I am not a medical professional whatsoever. That's why I say I'm a teacher, I'm a coach, I'm an educator, because I don't fix anybody, which, by the way, most eye doctors don't do either. I teach you how to do what I did because it's based on several things that we will get into. I know that much. So I work a lot of times, I work with eye doctors together because some people need additional help. So I will never, sometimes even they might need a counselor or therapy, right? So there's always, it's not like one person can kind of quote unquote help you with all your problems in your life. So I'm really good at identifying when my clients need more help. What I did really, that book was a book that was translated into German. It was a book from the 70s written by a woman in California. And that was the only book. And this is literally, I bought this in 1978, who, like, the only book I could find. The Central Library didn't have anything. Went to bookstores. I knew as a teenager there must be something you can do to make your vision better. Like, everybody laughed at me, but because here's the thing, I had that motivation because I got bullied and teased. And when I got out of classes, all of a sudden boys would be like, "You have pretty eyes." And before it was always like the bad eyeball, right? So a lot of times when I work with clients, like, you have to always look at, like, where is your motivation to make a change? Mine came out of this, like, yeah, the glasses were annoying too, and they fogged up and those things, but it felt like it wasn't me. There was a block between me and people. And when I got rid of them, I felt more confident. I felt like, and when you're a 15-year-old girl, it's like, it's all about, uh, dating. And so to me, that kind of opened up a new world of seeing and being seen, really. That was way bigger than just the inconvenience or whatever of glasses. And that's why I got so passionate about this early on.
Thank you for sharing that story. I love that you said that you have to have the motivation to make a change. And you talked about blurry vision. What are some of these hacks, since this is a biohacking podcast, that we can start to do that you've done to make our vision better?
So I always start with this, which was kind of my epiphany, right? When I got the story was, I got lost in the middle of in downtown Los Angeles. That was after my divorce or my separation. I tried to go out, have fun, felt really lonely, disconnected, didn't make it, like one of those days where you're like, oh, I don't know, I feel like old. And I had this epiphany that my vision was so much worse. And I thought to myself, this is interesting because you go to the eye doctor, they measure you, and then they do this or this or this, and then you're really already confused. I'm like, wait, I thought you can measure it. Like, why are you asking me? And then you're like, wait, can you do it again? No. Can you do it again? I don't remember. And it's so stressful, that test. So I basically already realized at that point, like, this is weird because they measured my vision. Like, why is my vision blurry? So basically my vision was blurrier after I took the glasses off than it was before I put them on. So I thought to myself, why is that happening? Like, what, like, there is some kind of strain when I wear the glasses. Is it just my muscles are not working? Like, I got interested in this, again, like, what is the mechanism of why is my vision so much blurry? And it took me a long time to adjust, So I got really interested in this idea of, like, why is my vision? And I also noticed my vision was changing anyway. On vacation, it was better. If I felt relaxed, it was better. If I was around people I liked, if I did things I liked doing versus things I didn't like doing. And I call this now strains and gains. And I would encourage everybody to connect the dots, because our vision is just part of our, like, nervous system. I call stress the root cause of blurry vision. And stress has the physical level, the emotional level, the mental level. We have an epidemic of anxiety these days, of depression. So it could also be like get hit in the head, you have a car accident, like, it could be just physical stress, like me as a single mom. I was like literally barely sleeping. So it was all these things rolled into a toxic cocktail, the divorce, the emotional upheaval, all these things, not eating good food. I didn't have time to make it, all these things. So when you realize that our vision is basically a response to the stresses in our lives. And mindset is a big piece too, because how I respond to things, how I feel about things. But at the end of the day, when we think about behavior change, our mindset, our habits, our nervous system regulation, and also understanding how the eyes and the brain, because we see in the brain, how this all works together, right? Once we understand these things, and I know your audience is kind of nerdy, they like kind of learning about this thing too, like me, right? We always have this like, wait, why? Like we always ask why, like, right? We're not the people who just like, okay, tell me what to do and I'm okay. I want to know why. Right. So, and I think that's what I see in the people that I work with that have success. They really like, they have a good motivation, a good reason, like why this is important to them, but they also really want to like understand, and they're willing to look at their own behavior and beliefs and thoughts, right? Like we have to be coachable.
I think what really stood out is I had a holistic optometrist on the show who said something very similar to what you said. When you're in the optometrist chair and he says, what's better, version 1 or version 2? It depends on how stressed you are. How did you sleep? What's your day look like? And so these are really good examples that you're giving, Claudia. I want to dive into food.
So food is one of those things that is like, we have all the food religions, but here's the thing. When we look at eye vitamins, I always start there because everybody heard of these supplements. And we look at this lutein and zeaxanthin are the two main ingredients. And those are like plant pigments that are basically for the retinal health, some in egg yolks. So that's a good source of that. We need astaxanthin, which is kind of a microalgae. It's like a red pigment, and that could be something where we might be a little bit short of. So sometimes looking at what you need to supplement. But again, a healthy diet, like drinking lots of water, right? Having, like, I drink structured water, hydrogen water, actually. So, getting like, basically, you've heard it everywhere else. We need like the omega-3 fatty acids. We need all these different vitamins. We need vitamin C, which is higher in bell peppers than in oranges, right? So we need to, like, I always say, eat like the rainbow. I don't care if you also eat meat or fish or whatever else you eat, but you need to have the vegetables, blueberries, antioxidants. We know all these things, right? It's like no different than what we need for our heart, our kidneys, and our liver.
I think these are good examples of food. And I heard on another podcast that there is a device, I'm not sure what it is, that can look in your eye, that can look into your brain and already see if you are pre diabetic or have some damage from maybe too much sugar. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I forgot that. So I was at one of the biohacking conferences, and they determine, this was more like determining your age based on your retina. So here's the thing, guys. That's why I love for people to go to the ophthalmologist. First of all, an ophthalmologist is a medical doctor versus, and there's a lot of great optometrists too. And there's many kinds of different optometrists, which is important to know. So an ophthalmologist is a medical doctor. They care more about your eye health, right? So because the retina tells us a huge picture about our health. So a retinal scan that they do at the ophthalmologist, and sometimes certain optometrists do that too, will tell you if you have pre-diabetes, like a lot of these changes, even Lyme or mold, before you have symptoms or any lab results. So the retina has the highest, like the tiny capillaries in the retina. So anything that's wrong in your body will show up in your eyes before it will show up like as massive symptoms somewhere else. So that's why getting an eye exam is already helpful. The device where I was looking into at the biohacking conference was more about looking at the retinal health, and that could determine your overall, the biological age. Mine was a lot younger, which is obviously what we want. But that is not a health, that doesn't tell you so much like what medical conditions you have. It gave you some kind of ideas, but an ophthalmologist, a trained ophthalmologist, can really tell you from looking at your retina what's going on with your health overall. So that's something I think it's very important to do. I do want to quickly differentiate between the optometrists. So with optometrists in the UK, sometimes called opticians. So there's different places, some that literally just focus on prescribing lenses, glasses, and contacts. You go to Costco, there's an optometrist, or you go to Lenscraft, is one of those places. And then there is another category of optometrists, and they have different names, depend a little bit. So they're called neurooptometrists, some are called behavioral optometrists or developmental optometrists. The developmental and behavioral optometrists usually work with children, but also adults, and they really focus on problems relating to how do the two eyes work together. Like I never did that as a kid. My parents also, back then when I was born, we didn't really have that. My parents didn't know about it, but basically they work on like I was squinting my right, I was turning in, so they work with like how your eyes work together, which is brain based. They help you with like, fusion exercises, and so also traumatic brain injuries. So that's more like a functional approach to, like, they might also prescribe glasses with prisms and things, but they focus more on kind of getting your brain back to the point where your eyes can both work together so that you have depth perception, right? Otherwise we don't see depth. So that's a special niche of optometry that is not, again, they might also prescribe glasses, but that's not really what they do. That's not really their main things. And then the ophthalmologists are the medical doctors. They also do surgeries for squint, but that's a whole nother can of worms we can talk about. But where they cut your eye muscles and they straighten the eyes, but they do things like LASIK surgery and obviously cataract lens replacement, like any kind of medical surgeries is done by ophthalmologists.
Ooh, well, you
I
just
know a
led
lot of
me.
information, but I think it's important to know the difference, right?
Yes,
And then
yes.
there's, even with ophthalmology, there's retinal specialists and like there's also all these different subcategories of specialties.
Well, you just led me right where I wanted to go because I had LASIK in 2016. And I think bought into this idea of just fix it with surgery and everything will
Uh-huh.
be great. And my eyes still are great. But can you weigh in on surgeries, glasses, and this whole realm of vision health?
So to me, and I know this word is so overused, but all these surgeries, they don't really address what I call the root cause. So before we get into the surgery, like I said, stress. And when we look at like stress, it sounds like this catchy word like trauma. It's like this big word. But when we are, let's backtrack a little bit. So, the nervous system, parasympathetic, sympathetic, we've heard this a million times. But basically, our vision is best when we are relaxed. Like if you ever had an accident, you're like, oh my God, like your pupils are dilated, your peripheral vision is shut down, you're in that fight or flight mode, which is great for emergencies, right? The digestion shuts down, like, all these things. But a lot of times, that was certainly me back then when I was a single mom. If that becomes a chronic state, right, we have these dilated pupils, which makes up more light sensitive, more headaches, like all these problems. So we need to, that's the thing where glasses or LASIK, which is actually in a way worse, because glasses we can change, we can reduce them, we can adjust them, right? But they just basically kind of put a band-aid on the solution. They put a band-aid on. So I always like, people ask me, can you correct your vision? And I don't like that idea of correcting vision, because when we talk, like, I always use a metaphor. Let's say we would never say, oh, can you correct my muscles? Like, can you make this muscle really strong? Or like the idea of, I'm going to the gym for 1 month, I'm working out like crazy and my muscles are corrected, I'm strong. So the idea is health is a lifelong journey, right? And yes, I get people, including myself, to the point where we can see clearly 2020, right? That's the goal. But then it's maintenance too, because guess what? Shit happens, right? There's a stressor here, there's a stressor there, somebody dies, there's a wildfire here, there's, like we have things coming at us all day long. And once if we don't know what causes your vision to get blurry, maybe like, am I upset? Am I stressed? Did something terrible happen? Then we do these kind of fixes, but they actually don't address the thing, and it kind of limits your ability to get better. So let's get specifically into LASIK. So I'm assuming you were nearsighted. Like most people that get LASIK are nearsighted. Were nearsighted.
I think that's what I couldn't really see the chalkboard. Like I couldn't see things far
Yes,
away. Is that
nearsighted.
okay?
Okay. So myopia, meaning nearsight, you can look really, you can see well up close, but the distance is blurry, right? So in myopia, what happens due to the stress and stressors, your outer eye muscles, especially the obliques, are very tight, and so your eyeball is a little bit elongated. Now, when I work with clients, we work on relaxing those muscles. They're weak because they're tight. They're not weak because they actually very strong, these muscles. So we want to kind of, help your eyeball to get, light exposure. There's a lot of things that go into this. We want the eyeball to become round again. So, but now when you have the LASIK, it kind of, obviously it's a cut into your cornea. It, kind of lasers the diopters onto your eye, but now your eyeball will not, it will kind of be forced to stay this way, because now in order for you to see, your eyeball cannot really go like background. But you know what I mean? Like then your vision would be blurry. The focal point would be behind the retina. So, and also LASIK is a cut into the cornea that's irreversible. Now that we look at how things change over the course of the life, it's never going to be that same way. It's not like that's good for the rest of your life. And the last thing, I know there's a lot of information. The last thing that people do not know, and this is super important. So listen, the diopters they put on your cornea, which was, do you know what you had before by any chance? Diopters is the strength of glasses. Do you know the number?
I don't, it wasn't very strong.
So let's say it was a -2. Is that, yeah?
Sounds
Okay.
about right.
So the -2 they put on your cornea was for very far distance vision. You never needed anything to read. You could always read a book without glasses or contacts, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So now you have this on your eyes. It's like work, like again, looking at workouts, because people get that idea. It's like running around with a weighted vest all day long. When you spend 8 to 10 hours a day looking at the computer, whatever, most of us do, right? So you don't need the -2 for being on the computer. And maybe you need a -0.5 for the computer and nothing for reading, because diopters are based on a specific distance. Nobody that gets reading glasses would do that. They always take the reading glasses off to look far, because they understand that the reading glasses only work for reading. They don't work for far. But nearsighted people get used to this idea. And when you're young, you're young, you can party all day, you can go, trust me, when you become older, not that we're not fit and young and good looking, but we have more wrinkles, and we basically, the body, shows the signs, and your eyes will have a harder time, have that weighted vest on your eyes to look up close, because now they need to do it against the 2 diopters that you don't really need. And it's causing a strain, and eventually you end up working +2 reading glasses. What will they do? -2 +2, 0. They will basically, right? So that's what happens with people that had LASIK.
For the people who have had LASIK, like myself, can we still strengthen our eyes?
Yeah, and I don't like to. I always say, like, relax your eyes, because like coming from the point of, when you're relaxed, and it doesn't mean you obviously have to be functional, right? We want to use our eyes, and this is part of what I teach. We want to use our eyes and the brain the way they were designed to be used, right? So when you do that, your eyes are already strong. You just have to learn how to use them better. So when you first start running, let's give that example. You're like, oh my God, you run like 100 yards. You're like, oh, and then you kind of train, or a golfer. The first time you golf, you're like, you use all the strain, and you're like, and you don't get anywhere, right? You hit the grass or whatever. I've tried it once and I gave up. But Tiger Woods, like, he would know. He's very focused. He uses all the muscles, and it's like a flow. Like you're working, right? You're not like plopping on the couch, but it doesn't require that effort that when you first learn something. And so I teach people to relearn how to use the eyes, because I'm on the computer 14 hours a day sometimes. The screens don't affect me one bit. So, and yes, I work with many, many people that had LASIK, and it doesn't mean that you can't make changes. It's just like you're not starting from scratch. You're starting with a little bit of it. It's like any other thing. Somebody can get really strong and they have a hip replacement or whatever, right? It doesn't mean that we can't make changes. It's just you're starting from a different point than somebody who didn't have LASIK.
Mm. So, Claudia, what are these changes that we can do?
Okay, so vision, I always want to differentiate between eyesight. Eyesight is how sharp you can see, also known as visual acuity. That's like when we say 20/20, 20/40, we use eye charts for those things. But vision is so much more. Vision is night vision, it's color vision, it's your peripheral vision, your field, it's how your eyes to work together, your binocular vision. So there's so many pieces to vision, And I teach people like the different aspects of what you need to do. Number one, eyes are light receivers. We're like, oh, I need to wear sunglasses because my eyes are so sensitive. I used to wear sunglasses 24/7, even when it was overcast. It's like my ears are so sound sensitive. Let me run around with these earmuffs because, so yes, when it's extremely loud, that's a different story, right? We go to like Coachella or something. But my point is, or listen to Metallica live, which I used to do when I was younger. Yeah, that might be a point where you want to have some protection for your ears. When you're an Arctic explorer, when you're like in the snow, when it's like extremely bright. Yes, we definitely want sunglasses, but our eyes need to be able to receive light so they can receive the image in the back of the eye. In the brain, we make sense of this. So our perception is in the brain. Our eyes don't know anything. In fact, the image of the retina is upside down. We might remember from school biology. It's like upside down. So the brain that's why we're arguing about things. Remember that dress thing that was like 10 years ago, the black and blue dress? That was a hot debate. You were probably too young, but there was a hot debate, and people were like, no, it's white and gold. And this was all based on like your brain makes assumption. This was a crappy little photo. It was tightly cropped. Is this in the day? Is it at night? Was it taken inside? Was it taken outside? Is this picture taken in the shadow? And your brain makes assumptions all day long based on your experiences, your memory of your assessment of the situation, of the context. But that doesn't mean that what we think we see is actually actually the right thing. And so we have to understand that perception is different from the signal that arrives on our retina. So I work with all these things, and things that, so light is important, reducing light sensitivity. We have all the beautiful, like people are so gung ho now on these infrared devices. Guess what? It's for free in sunlight. We just need to get outside, and it's free. It could be overcast too. It doesn't have to be sunny. First hour after sunrise and the last hour before sunset, there's not even any UV light in the light. So it's really like for anybody that's super light sensitive, I wean people into like slowly reducing light sensitivity. We do something called sunning. The eyes are closed. Sometimes people have to start with the back to the sun or do it in the really early morning or late evening. I had to work my way up too. Like I was so light sensitive, and now I can. I mean, if it's snowy and it's like I would be skiing still, I would probably wear sunglasses. But for everything else, I haven't worn them in 20 years. So light. And then the eyes need better movement. So a lot of times when people have poor vision, we have four types of movements in the eyes. And one of them is called saccadic eye movements. And those are the little jumps that the eyes make. And we want those to like a camera. Think of a camera shutter. We want it to be super fast because the faster they are, the more detail and more sharp things we can see versus like you have the old cameras with a like slow shutter speed and then something jumps, it's just all a blur. So we want these eye movements to be really fast, and just like breathing and blinking, which is a form of movement, blinking is really important. We can do something about those things. We do them automatically, thankfully, but we can also improve the saccadic eye movements. So I teach my students techniques to improve them, something called with a swing, other different shifting. There's certain techniques that we do to kind of improve these saccadic eye movements. And then there's also other movements that we do a lot. And this is where vision therapy, I talked about those optometrists earlier, fusion is how the two eyes work together. So those are vergence movements. Vergent meaning converging is looking up close, diverging is, but how do the two eyes work together? We don't want the eyes to go like, we don't want the eyes to go in different directions, usually when we look up. So basically vergence movements. And then there is smooth pursuit. Like if you ever watch like a bird in the sky, like, or like, you follow a pencil. So eye doctors often check that. So we're working on this idea of smooth pursuit movement, which is also important for reading, right? We want to kind of be able to follow the line. And then the last one, we don't do that much of. Those are vestibular ocular movements. So it's basically that keeps you balanced. So we do a lot of work with balance in general, but a dancer, how they spin and they would always look at the same point. So they work with the vestibular system in the ears to that. So if you've ever closed your eyes and you've done like balancing poses in yoga or something, how easy it is to fall over.
Yeah.
So Yeah, so that's those movements are also, we don't walk so much with those particular ones, but the movements are really important.
Well, I really like what you're saying, and I feel like it really resonates with me because I was a personal trainer for 7 years, and I forget where I learned this tidbit, but I would always tell my clients when we were doing a balance exercise, I would say, your body goes where your eyes go. Don't look
Yes.
down, look up. What, Claudia, I'm curious to learn, harms our eyes?
In the eyes, just like we need to rest our whole system. And resting can be closing the eyes. It could be like blinking. Every time you blink, we lubricate the eyes, but we also give them a micro, like super, I don't even know, nanosecond break, right? So there's a little pause. And I learned this from Andrew Huberman. Blinking actually slows down time. I'm like, not actual time, but the perception of time. Who doesn't want that, right? So rest, and we do something called palming. It's also from yoga called cupping, where you close your eyes and you cover them with your with your cupped hands, your closed eyes. It's a really great way to relax, not just the eyes, but also your mind. I don't know about you, but a lot of us like, anxiety is always about thinking about the future. Anxiety is very much related to nearsightedness and myopia. And then, anger or frustration or regret is a thing about the past. So we work a lot with these, like eyesight is present moment only. So we work a lot with these different states. And by the way, anger and resentment and past thinking is more farsightedness. So I can connect all these levels to different vision conditions really well. What is bad for the eyes? Okay, so I can tell you a few things. So one thing that's bad, like let's try, like we know staring. So I can't actually do it anymore. Oh, it hurts my eyes. I used to be so people with poor vision sometimes, and I've noticed this with gamers. They train themselves not to blink. Your
Ah.
eyes will dry out after 10 seconds. And it's like, have you ever like punched yourself on the skin and really pushed hard? First it hurts, and then eventually it kind of numbs. You don't feel it anymore, right?
Yeah.
Same when you eat something, right? The first bite is like so delicious. And then you eat more and you don't taste the things the same way. So it's the same with when we stare into space, things will actually blur out. And because we also don't do enough saccadic eye movement. So staring is one of those things you don't want to do.
So I am wearing only blue blockers. They're not real prescription glasses, but let's talk about blue blocking glasses.
So I'm personally I don't like wearing glasses whatsoever. So but I give you the except like so I have software on my computer. Actually, all the Apple devices have something called night shift mode where you can turn them more warm. I mean, everybody looks at my phone like, why? Oh my God, why is it so yellow? I have my phone all the way to the most yellow. Uh, so because the screens, LED lamps, screens, devices have way too much blue and green, they don't have any of the warm colors, whereas the natural light has this beautiful full spectrum light, right, which changes during the day, right? So the light changes constantly outside, versus computers have this kind of high level of blue. Now we know that blue keeps us awake. We need blue light. Blue light per se is not bad, but the natural light, it kind of peaks at noon and then it goes down again, right? So we have this kind of short amount of lot of blue light in the natural light, versus on the computer we have way too much, which keeps us awake, all these things. So I use software. There's also something called Flux. There's a software called iristech.co that was developed by a software developer that has more fancy settings. I love Iristech, but it's a paid software, but you can use any of those things. Now I do use, and I love raw optics. I love raw optics, and I will put them on right now for those of you watching. Not, if you're just listening, you don't see that. But these are like yellow, right? So these are the yellow ones. And when I gave my talk at the Health Optimization Summit, it was inside, it was fluorescent lighting in that conference room. That would be a point where I would put glasses on like this. If you have a job, my daughter used to work, actually, she's a nurse and in training now, but she used to work in a hospital where there was like no windows. So, all you had, and, was basically this kind of fluorescent lighting. If you're exposed to that, definitely wear blue looking glasses. I highly recommend it. But if you have your own home and working environment where you have natural light, I would rather just have the screens, block that all that blue
Ah,
light. But it depends.
okay.
And then I also really love the orange ones. I use these in the evening. So in the evening, like 3 hours before bedtime, I like to watch Netflix like everybody else does. And my daughter keeps telling me how old my TV is, like how unsharp and whatever. But I put these orange ones on. So these are like getting you more into that campfire kind of more tired effect. But I really only use those in the evening. And or if I'm at a friend's, I was at a friend's house, stayed there for a couple of days. And all that he had, there was these overhead lights, and they didn't have any kind of orange lights. All my lights in my house are like orangey, like, so I don't really, but if you're anywhere where it's like bright in the evening and you know that you have problems with sleep, I always recommend orange blue blocking glasses.
I love that, and because I live in New York City, I can see into dozens of apartments just right across the way, and I just shudder and feel so bad for the people who are living under these
I
bright white
know, right?
LED and fluorescent lights. And I wanted to ask you, Claudia, so you said you have a yellow tint on your phone, so I was wondering if you also do the red, because there's a
Yes. Oh,
shortcut.
yes. Yes.
Yes.
So I set it up in my control center on my phone. So I have a little button on my control center, and then in the evening
Yes.
it makes it. And I
Okay.
guess I have it with a double click too. I don't know how that happened because sometimes I want to pay at the grocery store. I'm double clicking, and all of a sudden it's red. I'm like, wait, how did I? But yes, make it definitely have the red light in the evening. And then also at night, if you wake up at night, you look at your phone, you don't want that blue thing. So yes, I do that as well.
Okay, good. Okay, so we talked about how staring isn't good for your eyes. And we talked about what I really, oh, that's what I wanted to go into, Claudia, was you said that different emotions are correlated with eyesight. Can you walk us through that a little bit more?
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to backtrack a little bit because all babies are born farsighted. So babies, their visual system develops, and I heard different things in up to 10 years, up to 15 years. We know that the prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed until 25. If you ever raise kids and teenagers, they just remember that prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed. But so farsightedness is, usually the visual system develops really quickly. Hand-eye coordination, looking at things up close. We have the little mobiles in the crib. They're moving. They're black and white, so they stimulate the visual system. So nearsightedness in children, it's like, why do we all of a sudden get nearsighted? And what I see happen a lot, and this is used adverse childhood events or trauma. I work with many people, horrific stories. I worked with somebody who had escaped Sudan. I mean, like that girl was 18 years old, horrific, traumatic experiences. But even like going to school and being bullied or not having friends, like we all react differently, but our nervous system can only make us relax, or we can only be relaxed when we feel safe. Now, for me, every day I walked to school, I didn't feel safe whatsoever. No, it wasn't like there was always people attacking me, but I know there was somebody was bullying me. Somebody would make fun of me. Somebody would maybe throw a stick at me, and the stick would get stuck in my bicycle, and I would fall over, whatever. So every single day there was like this stress moment. Myopia, a lot of times what happens is, like you said, you couldn't see the chalkboard, right? I don't think nowadays they don't even have blackboards or chalkboards anymore. I don't know what they have these days.
They just
But
use computers.
yeah. So basically, the teacher would say, and the school districts, I think, are required to let the parents know, your kid actually can't see the blackboard. Please take it to an eye doctor. And I actually talked a resident, no, a doctor who did a residency in a pediatric ophthalmology office. And he said, you know what, Claudia, it was really interesting because you can't measure kids' vision really well because first of all, the lens has a power of 60 diopters. It has an incredible power. But kids, first of all, remember how we talked about how scary it is to go to an eye doctor? And even the pediatric one, and I took my daughter, my older one, who had a squint like me and all these things, I took her to the eye doctor when she was 8 because everybody was hounding on me, like, she needs glasses, she needs all these things. She has perfect vision, by the way, now. So I took her to the eye doctor, and they make it nice, they make cartoon, but it's a dark room. You sit there, you have to read these like letters or whatever. If they're illiterate, they have pictures. It's scary, right? And so you did that, and he told me, he said the good kids, the ones that put their chin into the little thing and then they stare at the thing, they get glasses for myopia because they stare and they're horrified. They hold their breath and they're like frozen in that shock state.
Oh.
And the kids that wiggle around, remember how I talked about movement? They're wiggling around, they're blinking, they leave without glasses. And he said, and I've seen my neighbor, my former neighbor here, she had a daughter. She asked me for advice. I never ended up working with her, but she showed me two or three different prescriptions from pediatric optometrists and ophthalmologists. And guess what? They were all completely different. So a lot of
Oh,
times you can't really measure kids that well, because the machines, because again, their focusing abilities are so crazy good, but also when they're scared or horrified. So I call this pseudo myopia when they kind of go to the doctor, they're really horrified. Oftentimes my clients tell me, yeah, we moved, or I didn't have any friends, or my mom told me, don't look over there. There was something that made them like, I'd rather want to be in my little bubble of safety, maybe in my house, maybe in my family. But the nervous system wants you to feel good, right? So the nervous system blurs out the world, but you're not really, your eyeball isn't really too long yet. You just blur the world because it's like how people get eczema. It's like your body reacts somehow, or your senses react. And then you get the glasses and they actually manifest this. So a lot of times with myopia, there's always this fear about the future, like anxiety, like there's always fear. When I work with my clients and I say, say to like ground yourself and say, it's safe to see. And they would be like, it's safe to see. I'm like, it's not really safe, isn't it? And they said, no, I don't feel safe to see. And so there's that connection. And then with farsightedness, I found more often there's like regret in the past, there's anger, there's frustration. And that was 100% me. And also nearsighted people, when you think about bubble as being a personal space, like reach out your arms and then draw like an invisible bubble around you, what we would call our personal space. So a nearsighted person feels more comfortable in that kind of personal space. They're more concerned about themselves and others. That doesn't mean like selfish, but it's more like they're focusing more on this. Farsighted people, and we're always like, can I help you? We're always out there. We're always trying to fix the world. But when it comes to like looking at ourselves, I always say this when my kids went through counseling during my divorce. The counselor would come like, hey, how are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm okay. Like I was not, we're always out there. Um, so I do see these patterns, and the stigmatism is just a massive amount of confusion about what you want and what you feel. So I always look at these things, and also Chinese medicine. The right side is kind of the analytical, the male side. The left side is the female side, and I don't take those as like dogma, but I'm always opening up a discussion working with somebody, and more often than not, I would say there's always this kind of connection to like those feelings. And I found this every single time. Why do we get cataract so often in the 60s? It's like, there's like the kids out of the house. What's my purpose? I don't see a bright future. I see a dark future.
oh.
There's not enough joy in my life. There's a lot of like, when we look at all these different layers of vision, for some people, it could be more emotional than for others.
It's all connected.
Yes.
Let's go into diseases, Claudia. The one that I want to start with that I'm interested in, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but is there anything we can do about retinal tears?
Retinal tears is definitely a tricky one, but oftentimes we hear about retinal detachment, right? So a lot of times what I found, and I don't know, like retinal tears goes into that same category. There's sometimes like unprocessed grief. Like every time I have worked with somebody with this, I would be like, well, is there something tragic or really sad happened in your life? And a lot of times there will be something, and where they kind of pushed it under the rug or like didn't really process it. So grief could be one of those things. Retinal tears, and by the way, pretty much all vision conditions have a way higher incidence with high levels of nearsightedness. So retinal detachment, cataracts, glaucoma, macular degeneration, post-vitreous detachment. When we look at higher levels of nearsightedness, and this is like more like over 5, 6, there's a way higher incidence of any vision condition. So especially the retinal, because remember, your eyeball is elongated, so there's a lot of pressure on your eyeball, and that makes it easier for things to kind of, for damage to happen.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that there were different emotions with different diseases. Can you tell us a little bit more of, or some common diseases associated with eyes that we can start to fix or pay more attention to?
Yeah. So, we have to look at, I always see these ads on Instagram, like, oh, and then it's like these videos that you can't pause. And they say all the right things in the beginning. There's always a fake doctor involved. But here's the thing, there is no pill, first of all, because the pills that they offer at the end of this, which is like one of those scam videos, right? They actually have good ingredients if they're actually in there. But when we look at the eye, and I have my little model there, but when we look at the eye, every disease, there's different parts of the eye. So let's look really quick. Cornea is the very front. If you were to, like, you don't want to do that with a dirty finger, but if you were to touch your eye, the first thing you hit is the cornea, right? So there's corneal diseases. Astigmatism is not a disease so much, but it's connected to the cornea. Fuchs dystrophy, those kind of corneal things. Corneal ulcers, which we often see with contact lens wearers. So that's the cornea. The cornea, I would say, or keratoconus is a disease where the cornea is not dome shaped, but it becomes more like cone, like a pointy cone. There's a lot of this pressure, like forward pushing. Like I'm always hard on myself. I'm pushing. I'm not like relaxing. Eyes are light receivers, so we want to receive things, allow ourselves to receive. Then we have dry eye is a wholly different topic too, but then we have the lens. So the lens, the most common thing is cataracts, which is a clouding of the lens. I already talked about this. I very much feel like it's like you're retired. You're like, what's my purpose? There's not enough joy in life. Maybe you're by yourself. You like a partner has passed. So there's a lot of this feeling of it. There's a dark future. I don't have any purpose in my life. I'm kind of useless in our society. We don't really revere the elders, like in some, more ancient, or we call them uncivilized, but I think they're very civilized tribes where the elders are really revered. And, so that's a different thing. And then we have um, the retina. We have the vitreous in the middle, the gel in the middle. That's where the floaters happen. But the retina is the one where we have a lot of diseases. So you talked about retinal tears. Macula is the center of the retina where we have our sharpest, best vision. When we say visual acuity, that happens in the macula. We have most color vision there. So that's the sharpest vision. So if you have a macular pucker, a macular edema, macular degeneration, which is, by the way, there's age-related AMD, and then there's one that's related to high myopia. But that's where you lose your sharp central vision. So if I were advanced, I were to look at you, I wouldn't even see you. I would see everything around you. So at the advanced stage, you don't see anything in the center of your vision. So that's a lot of times also like, what do I not want to see? There's a lot of this I like, because it's about sharp vision, color vision, detail vision. What do I not want to see? I see a lot with macula. With retina, again, it could be like unprocessed grief. It could be like you're detaching, like post-vitreous detachment, retinal detachment, something that you detach yourself from, but you didn't process it right. And then, so yeah, and then the last one of the common ones is glaucoma. So glaucoma is a pressure-related disease. Most people have elevated intraocular pressure. Think of blood pressure, but in the eyes. There's also ones that have regular pressure, but let's talk about, so glaucoma is a pressure-related disease that affects your optic nerve. You will lose your peripheral field. So you have kind of tunnel vision, right? And it's called the silent vision killer because you don't really it's not like that black field that everybody shows. It's like your brain fills in the gaps, but you basically don't even notice that you're losing your peripheral vision. So it's very dangerous. That's why we want to get our eyes checked. But glaucoma is like, a lot of times these people put a lot of pressure on themselves, high performers. The ducks have to be always in a row. If somebody was like mean to us, we are unforgiving. We have like, like this kind of, like this idea of let it go, put less pressure on yourself, is definitely important with glaucoma.
What about cataract surgery? My dad had it recently and he was so thrilled about it.
Well, yeah, so this is a good topic. So I think I'm totally okay with surgery, cataract surgery. So there's usually 4 stages of cataracts. Usually in the old days, they waited till it was really mature, meaning a 4. You see that with dogs sometimes, when instead of black in the middle of the eye, it's just white. It's like milky. So in advanced cataract, everything will be looked like if you have a fogged up shower door. You can't see anything, no matter what glass you put on. The brain will also detach itself from the environment, because if you can't see anything ever clearly, you lose your curiosity. You don't want, like, you don't even look, what is that? Because you don't see it anyway, right? So you detach yourself really from the whole world. So I had people, early stage cataracts, completely reverse this. We had recently a client who had a stage 3 in one eye and a stage 2.5. They're both a stage 2 now, which I didn't even expect. So we can definitely improve. But there's also a point where I would always say, do the surgery. But also I educate people on the surgery. There's many different types of lenses they can implant. A lot of times my mom had a surgery many years ago that she didn't know anything about the lenses. The eye doctor didn't really explain those types of lenses to her, because you can do distance, you can do monovision, which I don't recommend. You can implant multifocal lenses, which also don't recommend unless you've had multifocal contact lenses. But you need to know what you're doing. And like you said, if you don't learn what I teach, which is like really how the eyes work and how we see in the brain, everybody's back in glasses really quickly after cataract surgery. So yes, it's one of the safest, most performed eye surgeries, the only eye disease where we actually have quote unquote a fix. Because for none of the other ones, for macular degeneration, you get shots into your retina once a month. Horrible. They just stop the progression. They don't make anything better. For glaucoma, they give you drops to reduce the pressure. Again, they don't make anything better. They just keep it at bay, right? So it's like whatever you already lost in peripheral field potentially is not going to get better. So cataract is the only one where the traditional methodology has kind of a fix, you know. But you want to really understand how your vision works, how your emotions play a role into that to keep your vision. So I recommend doing both, like yin and yang.
Okay. Oh, I like that. Okay, so I've told you about my dad. Now, my stepdad has Stargardts and is legally blind, can no longer drive a vehicle. And I'm wondering, I know it's a very specific eye disease, but are you able to help people with Stargardts?
Well, I didn't have anybody specifically, at least not to my knowledge, because I do mostly online programs. Not everybody tells me exactly what their condition is either. So it's it's a form of macular degeneration. And yes, we can definitely help. This is the kind of any retinal diseases is where, and even cataract, where diet plays such a huge role. You know, cataract, 60% of cataracts are related to diabetes. Diabetic retinopathy, which is a retinal disease, is obviously related to diabetes, but you don't have to have diabetes. I give you a couple of stories. So I had a woman call me. She was early 40s. She said, I have early stage cataracts. What can I do? And I said, well, are they congenital? I mean, do you have cataracts in the family? Because babies can be born with cataracts, actually. She said, no, no. I'm like, well, what about your blood sugar? You know, I have the CGM in my arm here. She said, oh, yeah, yeah, I have pre-diabetes, but my doctor said nothing to worry about. I'm like,
Oh.
so, you know, blood sugar imbalances, metabolic issues, they will all lead to, like, eye diseases, all have a high risk factor with metabolic issues and blood sugar imbalances. And again, diabetes, you don't have to be diagnosed fully with diabetes to see these changes. So that's why we need a clean diet. So when 20-year-olds come to me, diet usually doesn't make, like, yes, it's good to eat healthy, of course, right? Don't smoke cigarettes, don't use cosmetics with lead in them, all the toxic stuff, right? But in terms of the vision improvement process, they wouldn't see like that would be more long-term solution that would be smart to implement. But when we get older, it's not like age related stuff. It's just decades of doing bad things, being exposed to bad things have accumulated. We need to do the detoxification protocols. We need to, right? When we get older, we need to be very vigilant with those things, right? You know, and we will see a quick difference versus somebody who's really young. They don't have all these things accumulated so much in their system. You know what I mean? So, yeah, but we have to, it's a holistic approach.
It is. That's what I'm gathering. I also wanted to go back to what you had mentioned about kids because I feel like it breaks my heart when I see these cute little kids being pushed around in a stroller with glasses on or even sunglasses. So I'm curious to learn, Claudia, both for children and adults, what can we do to get out of glasses?
I know I said to my daughters, I'm not a grandmother yet, but it must be really hard being a parent nowadays. Kids, you know, their visual system really doesn't fully develop. They will become myopic. We have an epidemic of myopia in the young generation because they spend all this time at the near point. So, you know, the kids that play 2 or more hours outside have been shown in studies to have lower rates of nearsightedness. They looked at Chinese young adults living in Australia versus in cities in China, same genetics, lower rates of nearsightedness. So our eyes, they believe that there is dopamine receptors in the retina, that basically the light kind of helps to grow the eyeball into the round shape versus being elongated. But they did animal experiments with chickens and frogs and monkeys, putting black contact lenses on one eye. That eye grew elongated and became myopic because there was no light. So we know how important natural light is. So putting sunglasses on small children is really bad. Now, again, I have a picture of me. We didn't have sunglasses back then, but I have a picture of me at one of the mountains in Germany in the snow, and I wore sunglasses. So yes, if you're in these extreme conditions, or the light, there's always yes and, right? So I'm not saying they should never, ever, ever wear sunglasses, but you want the visual system to be fully developed, have them look near and far, play games, ball throwing, like catching and throwing. So good, with little bean bags, juggling, those are all the things we want them to do. Less homework, less time with homework. I know, easier said than done, right? But Montessori never gave them homework. They learned everything in school. I mean, kids are not meant to sit, at a desk without moving. Like ADHD, we have this increase in all this. Like a lot of this is diet related, it's light related. It's like there's so many schools have the bad lighting. So whatever you can do when you have children, I know it must not be easy. I get it. I was really strict as a mom. I used to work in advertising and my kids would not have computer access, but also that was like, they were like 10 and 12 when the iPhone came out, right? So but I was the bad mom a lot of times, but I'm like, and now my daughter said, my younger one said, Mom, I will not have an iPad, baby. I'm like, okay, good. But
Good.
you have
Good.
to be the parent, or the grandparent or the teacher, and you have to, kids are super curious, don't take it away by putting them in front of screens, but let them explore their world, really.
Oh, I love that. Get outside, less screens. Claudia, there are so many questions that I want to ask you, but as we wrap up this podcast, I ask all my guests the same closing question, which is, what haven't I asked you that you'd like my listeners to know?
We didn't talk about presbyopia or reading glasses, which people get in their mid 40s. Again, we're aging. I'm not pretending I'm not aging. Everybody is aging. It doesn't matter if you feel like you're 20 or your biological age is 20 and you're actually 50. Good for you. But it doesn't mean we can't do something about it, right? We can optimize our vision just like we can. There's many 100-year-olds that have great vision. So we're not doomed, but it's up to you. There's not somebody fixing you. I think that's a key thing that we have to understand.
Oh, I like that. There's nobody fixing you. You're the one that's responsible for your health. Well, since we do have a few more minutes, can we go into those little cheaters?
Yeah. So the cheaters are basically so basically the idea is that when we have farsight, the eyeball is too short. But when we have presbyopia or old age sight, the lens stiffens or it hardens or it grows more layers. Whatever is the case, it doesn't mean that you can't look up close. You just have to, again, the eyeball length and the cornea and the lens are all responsible. Like a camera, there's the different pieces, right? How the old-fashioned cameras have a longer. So we have a lot of control over how we focus our eyes up close. But I also see with older age, there's this idea of like, I don't want to look at this stuff anymore. There's this kind of people like in my world as entrepreneurs, delegation. And I have a team. I'm not saying we shouldn't outsource things, but are you not interested in the details anymore? Are you brushing them off? Do you don't want people to come too close? So a lot of times when I work with people that have presbyopia, first of all, we get them out of those strong glasses. Something you didn't ask me either about is progressive glasses or bifocals, which are the horrible thing because they screw up, they cause astigmatism. There's a huge problem with these glasses. So I get everybody, like if you need glasses for something, go to the drugstore, get the cheaters, like if you do. But then a lot of times we have people that have like almost 6 in their prescription glasses in their 70s, really strong reading glasses in their bifocals or progressives. And they went to the drugstore and said, oh, you know what? The plus threes work totally fine. I can see everything perfectly fine. So we want to get into weaker glasses in any case, not just presbyopia. And then don't wear glasses when you don't need them. So you were nearsighted. You never needed glasses for reading because you only had like what, a -2 or something like minor, right? Man. So don't worry if you're farsighted. Driving is always the safety thing. We have to be very clear. If it's in your license, you have to get it removed. Many of my clients got it removed from the license. So you can improve your vision, but you need that cleared. And then safety first with driving, right? So we need to make sure that we see at least 20/40 vision. I teach people how to do all these things. So you're responsible for your own decision making, right? But getting into weaker glasses or not wearing glasses when you don't need them. So presbyopia is just like anything else. You're making a strain at the near point. You as a nearsighted person made a strain at the far point. You're like making an effort. So whenever our vision is best, we don't make an effort. We just look, it's easy, right? So we want to kind of improve that. And if you're farsighted, you want to improve the clarity. You want to kind of have that relaxation slowly coming closer. When you're nearsighted, don't start with a mile away. You're starting with like slowly expanding your area of clarity further out. So that's easier step by step than starting with the worst, most challenging thing.
Oh my goodness. You're just a wealth of knowledge. Claudia, can you please tell my listeners where they can go to find out more about you?
So my website is naturallyclearvision.com. There's also a download. You can download my free 10 habits guide. You can learn about my programs. I also have an Instagram. I love Instagram. I love social media. And I'm on YouTube too every week. We have a live show called Clear Vision Wednesday. And the handle is Holistic Vision Coach.
Amazing. Well, we will be sure to point listeners in the right direction. Claudia, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. I can talk about this forever, as you might have noticed.
I love it. This podcast is a labor of love, and I'm dedicated to providing free content for years to come. If an episode has brought you joy, clarity, or valuable insights, your support means so much to me. A quick shout out on Instagram or sharing this podcast with a friend can make a big difference. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, a great way to help support the show, or even on YouTube, is by leaving a review. You can also help support my work by using any of the affiliate links that I leave in my detailed show notes, or visit my website, ashleydaily.com. I'm most active on Instagram if you're looking for me, so you can find me at Ashley_Daily. Thank you for helping me keep this podcast alive. This podcast is presented for educational and exploratory purposes only. Published content is not intended to be used for diagnosing or treating any illnesses, disease, or disorders. Those responsible for this show disclaim any responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of this information presented by myself or my guests. Please consult with your healthcare provider before using any products or services referenced in this podcast. This podcast may contain paid endorsements for products or services. Any third-party materials or content of any third-party site referenced on this show do not necessarily reflect the opinions or standards of the policy of my guests. This podcast and my website, ashleydaily.com, represent the opinions of myself. The content discussed on the show should not and does not replace medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only. Episodes on Welcome to Wellness may at times cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to depression, suicide, COVID-19, vaccines, events related to the pandemic, 5G, big pharma, nootropics, circumcision, psychedelics, hormones, the Women's Health Initiative, the use of plant medicine, abortion, geoengineering, terrorism, gender, AI, and sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You are advised to refrain from listening to this podcast if you are likely to be offended or adversely impacted by any of these topics. However, if these topics interest you, you just may have found your tribe. The information or opinions expressed on the Welcome to Wellness show are solely the views of the individuals involved and by no means represent absolute facts, opinions, or expressed by the host, and guests can change at any time. The views of my guests are solely their views, and the Welcome to Wellness show does not accept responsibility for them, and any action you take on the information contained within this show is strictly at your own risk. The Welcome to Wellness host, Ashley Daily, will not be liable for any losses or damages in connections with the use of this podcast. You should take all necessary steps to ascertain the information you receive from this podcast is correct and has been verified. None of the guests or the contributors on the Welcome to Wellness podcast will be responsible for your use of the information contained therewithin. Under no circumstances will the Welcome to Wellness show or my affiliate partners, suppliers, licenses, or guests appearing on the show be liable for any direct or indirect consequential damages arising from your inability to access this podcast. All intellectual property rights belong to me, Ashley Daily, and are included but not limited to the copyright and any other rights in the design. You are permitted to the Welcome to Wellness podcast for personal use, but not for commercial use without license. You may not make recordings of or otherwise copy this podcast. If you breach these terms, you lose the right to access the Welcome to Wellness podcast, and you must destroy or return any copies of the recordings you've made. Guests on the Welcome to Wellness podcast may at times provide information on or read extracts from third-party copyrighted work. The Welcome to Wellness podcast does not provide any medical or professional advice advice within these episodes. If you take any action or inaction as a result from the content you consume from within the Welcome to Wellness podcast, this is based solely on your decision, and the Welcome to Wellness podcast and Ashley Deely and my guests cannot be held responsible or liable for any of the consequences on such action or inaction. Thank you.